When I was 6 or 7, maybe even 8, I thought it would be great to slip through the heavy door of our church and catch Jesus out of the tabernacle, where I knew he was for real. How could he stay all day? Sheer thought of it was a question. How could he fit? He must have been smaller than me, maybe only 4 like the little Hungarian next door. But I never found him just walking around or looking at the stained glass window or station. It was, in grown-up terms, utter frustration. Now I am 80. I sit quiet and close near a dying nun. I know that Jesus will come. I want to be there. I make a stab at prayer. Now and at the hour of our death, I say, hoping that clement and sweet Virgin Mary will also pray. I watch the nun. She stirs a bit, probably at settlings of last things with Jesus, before the sighing breath that heralds what we call death. And suddenly, I'm swept into sacred space. I know he's here, holy. One person's small history moves forward into a mystery. And I say softly, holy, holy, holy. That poem was written by Mary McKenna. Some know her as Philothea. She was truly a Renaissance woman. She taught every grade from grammar school, elementary school, high school, college, graduate. She went on to be the producer and director of the new Brooklyn Diocese educational TV channel. She became a DRE at a parish, and she became an elder. Full circle happened in her mid-80s. She returned to Brentwood. And I remember her telling me when she was a novice that her charge was to read to the sisters in the infirmary, which is on the 2nd floor of St. Joseph Convent. She would go from room to room and read novels and poems and theological articles. And then here she was in her mid-80s, companioning the sick and the dying. Truly a daughter of Joseph, patron of a happy death. Who wouldn't be with Mary and Jesus by their side? But he's also called a companion of the sick. And it reminded me of a favorite movie of mine. It's called The Nativity Story. And in it, the writer takes great liberty in painting in a fuller way what's lacking in the scriptures. And the scene that I really like is when Joseph has brought Mary to Bethlehem through an arduous journey. They're there in the cave stable, just Joseph and Mary goes into labor. And as she's sweating and pushing, Joseph is there with her. And then we hear the cry of a child. And Joseph holds up the baby, laughing, and then in tears, and then laughing as he sees their firstborn, Jesus. With a father's heart, that's how Francis begins his letter about the year of Joseph. With a father's heart, he companions Jesus in his childhood. And with Mary, they share very ordinary, everyday kind of events. These past few weeks, I've heard many of the healing stories of Jesus. By word, be freed of your infirmity. By deed, and taking her hand, he raised her up. Healings both near, as the leper called out, Son of David, both far, the daughter of the Syrophoenician woman being healed. And I wondered, how did Jesus learn to be such a healer? We all kind of agree that Joseph taught Jesus how to be a carpenter. But I also believe he taught him how to companion the sick and the dying. Perhaps at the death of his grandparents. Perhaps in Jesus' own growing up. You can't tell me in his childhood there weren't scrapes and maybe even broken bones. That Joseph was with Jesus, companioning him. And did Mary ever experience a fever like Peter's mother-in-law? And Joseph companioned her in her illness and taught Jesus how to be with the sick and the dying. I think Joseph taught Jesus with eyes open and ears alert and spirit alive and sleeves rolled up, how to companion the sick and the dying. Joseph showed Jesus how to companion the sick and the dying. And generations later, Jesus showed Mary McKenna how to companion the sick and the dying. As Mary was approaching her own death, just a few months after she wrote that poem, she told me she would pray to God, "God, I'm ready." And God would say, "Dig." And she said, "Dig? Dig." And the next day she'd say, "I'm ready, God." And God would say, "Dig." And after days and days of that, when God said, "Dig," Mary said, "I can't dig anymore." She had dug down into the roots of her own family and into the roots of her family of faith. She had also dug the possibilities of the next and the more. What would be the next step for her? And at Mary's dying, she was companioned by her two loving aides, Fredina and Esmeralda, the next generation of persons of Joseph. And so the words of her poem come alive for me in another way. She stirs a bit, probably at settlings of last things with Jesus, before the sighing breath that heralds what we call death. And suddenly, she is swept into sacred space. She knows he is here, holy. One person's small history moves forward into mystery, and she says softly, "Holy, holy, holy." In light of Joseph as the companion of the sick and the patron of a happy death, I offer you these two questions for reflection. How might you allow Joseph, with a father's heart, to touch the places of sickness and perhaps even death within yourself and help you to bring them to his son, Jesus? What might Joseph teach you as he taught Jesus? What might he teach you about companioning the sick and the dying today?